Hello everyone. I am going to paint a canvas for you today, and this is just going to be a straight video tutorial. There will be no line drawing or anything because your interpretation of this will be what you paint. This was I painted this a couple years ago for my living room, and it was a photo that I saw on YouTube somewhere. I don't even remember where I saw it, but I'm going to paint this for you today. So I've got here a canvas. Let me hang my picture up over here. And I just have it gessoed with white gesso because I had something else painted on it, and then I dropped something on it so it looks really, really bad. So just ignore that. So now we're going to use tube acrylics here, and when I did my first one, I just went to Hobby Lobby and bought tube acrylics. So you can use Master's Touch, you can use Americana, you can use Basics. These were the two that I used in my original one. Or you can use some really nice acrylic paints, whatever you have that you want to use. Whatever. I didn't use the 2-ounce bottle tube acrylics, you know, like I normally use, this kind, because I just wanted a little bit different look to my painting. And this tube acrylic already has like a sheen to it. I did go ahead and varnish my painting, but trying to get my paint squirted out here because all of my tubes are almost completely empty. So hopefully that is enough of that. And then I've got a couple of blacks here that are almost empty, so I'm just gonna squirt out what I got. This is Ivory Black. It's a Basics brand. So really, truly, whatever you have is going to be just fine. So I'm going to start by dampening my brush here. I've got a fairly large brush. Probably a bigger brush would be better to cover the background. It would cover quicker. So I'm just going to get a chip brush and cover the background. I'm just going to put a little bit of water in it because these brushes hold water a lot. And I'm going to load up with some white paint. Just completely load it. And I'm just going to paint some white down the center. I want to make sure I get my edges, just in case I don't want to put this in a... That's the bad thing about chip brushes, is they lose a lot of hairs. Lots of bristles come out. And this chip brush has probably been just overused. I've got some water, as I always do, spritzed on my palette over here. So as I need water on my brush, I can get that. So now I'm just going to tip in one corner into some black. And I'm going to start putting some of this on here. This is our background. I'm going to work it over to that white a little bit. I'm going to tip into that black again. Maybe get a little bit of white back on my brush and go on this side. Come down, do my bottoms down here, my edges. Okay, I want a little bit more black in there, so I'm going to get some more white and tip into that black again, especially on this side. Bring that over a little bit more. I really want it to just kind of streak through there. Okay, more black. I went ahead and put a little bit more white on my brush so I can blend these out. We're just going to go from side to side here. edges. Load a little bit more white. I'm just coming right over here to the white and pulling some out and then going into some black. Getting some black on there. I want this to start being a little bit darker as I go out here. A little bit more black. So I'm going to walk that over towards that white a little bit so I can streak it through there. And then just pretty much straight black. Except I have white in my brush so it's blending with it. But we want the outer edges to be the darkest over here. Do the same thing over on this side. A little bit of water in my brush helps the paint to move. You don't have to worry too much about complete solid coverage here. Hope I'm keeping you on camera shot. Because we're going to be putting stuff on top of it. This is the background. And a lot of it will be covered up. You will also need some glazing medium for this painting. Okay, so our outer edges are the darkest, and then it works its way in to the light. Put a little bit more over on this side. I don't feel like it's near dark enough. Okay, I'm going to do my edges. And I'm going to get it dry because we can't go to the next step until it's dry. But we want to make sure our edges are covered because we're not going to come back probably and do anything else to our edges. So go ahead and get your edges painted on. Okay, so I'm going to go off of camera and get my edges finished and get this dry. Okay, my background's dry, so now I'm going to take just a damp Filbert brush. This is a number 6, and I'm going to load some black paint in my brush. You can use whatever brush you're comfortable using. Now, my original one I painted like on a 24 by 36, so this one's 11 by 14, so I hope I can convert that down in my brain here. Alright, I'm just drawing some distant trees back in here. We're not going to see a whole lot of this. We don't have to add a bunch of detail to them. This is going to kind of fade back when we add our glazing medium on here to give it kind of that misty look. So just continue all the way across here with this first row of trees. I'm just up on the chisel edge of the brush, and I did add some water so it would flow very nicely off of my brush. Okay, so that's our first layer of trees right there. We want it to be completely dry before we go to our next step on here. Okay, I think this is dry enough to go to our next step. So I've got a dampened brush. This one, what size it is? It's 1.5 inch flat here. So I've got some glazing medium here on my palette. So I'm going to load my brush up with this glazing medium and get a little bit of white. Not very much. I want more glazing medium than I want white because we're going to be putting many layers on this. And I'm just going to kind of mix that together. And we're just going to brush this across the entire piece here. And then we will have to let this dry. We want to cover all of our trees here. A little bit more glazing medium there. The glazing medium is going to make the paint transparent as long as you don't use a ton of the white. Okay, so that's our first layer of glazing medium and some white. So now we've got to get this completely dry here. Okay, I think mine's dry enough here. So we're going to go back into our black. And we're going to start making some, we're going to come down below where we put these trees. And we'll make some little bit bigger trees. You can give these some branches if you want, but still you don't have to get a whole lot of detail in here. And they don't have to be in a complete line. So this one I'm going to bring down just a little bit lower. And branch off. So I'm going to put one here. And give it some branches. I'm going to kind of not go directly in the middle because that's where our brightest area is going to be. So I'm going to go over here a little bit. Put one here. And a few little. Over here. I might bring that down just a little bit. And just a few branches off there. We're not working on much detail here yet. Alright, so now in between these trees, I just want to throw in some extra lines for other trees. Kind of the illusion of some trees back in there. Remember, we don't want them in a row down here at the bottom. No little soldiers. Okay, we got to get this dry. We're going to glaze again. Before I glaze, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give these a little bit of you know, foundation down here. So they actually look like they're where they need to be. Okay, just kind of root them to the ground. A little dirt piled up around them. We also want to add some little foliage on here, but not very much on these, because the ones that are more forward will have. So you're going to need some type of scruffy type brush that you can tap some foliage on. Again, this is just with the black. Make it pretty loose. Don't fill your trees in. We just want a little bit of this back in here. We're not doing anything that's making a lot of detail yet. Just some distant stuff. This is still just all distant stuff. And this is just with black. I've got some, my brush is damp, so I'm not leaving down very thick paint because I've got some water in my brush. So that's kind of all we need to do there. And it's just a quick little tapping, just very, very loosely throw in some of that color on those trees. And now I am going to let it get completely dry here. Okay, I feel pretty dry here, so we're going to go back into our glazing medium, load our brush up and get a little bit of white and work that into our brush with the glazing medium. And again, we're going to brush this over our entire painted area. We're pushing all this stuff back to the background. I think I'll apply just a little bit more paint. Oh, my glazing medium must have been in a puddle that was dry there. Put some fresh out in a new spot here. That's got a lot of paint, so pick up a little bit more glazing medium and blend that out a little bit. I'm trying to keep you on camera here without raising this up so you can't see it. Alright, my glazing medium is starting to dry here, so I'm just dragging through it and pulling it up. So some in my paint there. It's not coming off. Okay, so that's another wash of color on there. We've got one more, actually two more rows of trees before we put the big one in right here. The next one we're just going to do just a few trees on each side, like 3 over here and maybe 2 over here, and then we'll do the 4 trees that are really, really dark in the front. Okay, let's add our next little grouping of trees here. Now, my original one was a 25 by 36, so I had room to do several more layers of trees than I am on this one. So if you're doing a big canvas, you'll have room to layer more trees in there. And I probably should have my glazing medium a little bit heavier, so when I apply it this time, I'm going to add a little bit more white, especially in the center here. I want it to be the brightest right through here. So on this next layer of trees, I'm going to put a couple of trees over here. And maybe, I want them to be right next to each other. So I'm going to put one that's kind of growing off this way, give it some branches. be too awful technical about it. And then I'll put another one that's right beside it here. Have it be a little bit straighter of a tree. I do want this tree to come up a little bit more. And then we'll give it a few little branches. Ooh, or a fat little branch. I'm going to take some of that off of there. That is just way too big of a branch. Could use a smaller brush to do this too. That would be a whole lot easier and probably better. Alright. Okay, and then over here I think I'm going to put 3 trees. Make it more similar to my original one that I painted. So I'm going to put one here. It's a fairly straight tree. Give it some branches. And then we'll put 2 here, 1 here, kind of another little crooked one. And then we'll do another one right beside it, and we might lean it away just a little bit. Alright, let's give it a little bit of foundation here. Okay, then we've got to get this, well, we got to put some leaves on here first before we can get this dry. So go back to your scruffy brush and load some black in it. And let's tap in some foliage on this tree. Spray my palette with some more water here. I like to have water on my palette that I can pick up and use when I need it, and that way I'm not grabbing tons of paint or tons of water out of my we could bring this around if we want to. I'm not having tons of water out of my water basin. Again, we're trying to keep this loose and airy, though I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job here. Especially right there, I just completely filled that in right there. Yay me! Just try not to fill the whole area, because it's that's probably good enough right there. So we got to get this dry, and then we're going to glaze the whole thing again with the glazing medium and white. And then we're going to add our 4 brightest trees in the front here, and put our foliage and everything on there and do our finishing. Oh, I hope you guys are going to love this because it's going to look awesome. Okay, we're dry here, and it should dry fairly quickly. I'm not putting very thick paint on here, so it should dry pretty quick. Alright, again, the glazing medium with the white mixed in. My ceiling fan on too, so it's drying very quickly. each layer of glazing medium should push those trees in the back farther and farther back into the painting. Oop, a little bit too much paint there, I think. Oop. And then too much glazing medium. Okay, we're gonna make our more forward trees now. There's 4 of them. I've got the big one that's coming up here. I've got a small one that's going this way, one here and one here. Now, I just want to point out on my original one, because it was so large, I had so many layers of trees, it really pushed these way back in there. So they're not pushed back as far as I would like them to be, so I'll probably come in and glaze some more white there in the center. But for now, we're pretty much done with the glazing part. We're just going to paint our more forward trees and then do all of our reflection stuff down here. So again, I'm switching over to a flat brush now, and I'm still using my black paint. So black and white right now are the only 2 colors we've used in glazing medium. So I want my big tree to be probably right about here. You don't want it directly in the center, you want it off center. So I am going to put it right about here. We got to have room for our reflection stuff down here, so I am going to bring it up. Get some more paint here. And then finish bringing my trunk up. And then we'll make some limbs off of this trunk. So just start making some nice, substantial, but not ginormous limbs. We want our tree to come out and be nice and full. This will mostly be covered up by our leaves, but some of it may peek through. Okay, I think that's enough probably for that tree, considering how small this canvas is compared to my first one. So then I want another tree back here, and I don't want it even with this tree. I don't want it even with those trees, so I'm going to put it in between. And it's got kind of a crooked little trunk going on here. Goes up and off that direction. This one's our focal point, so don't make these other trees as big. Okay. Give it some nice limbs on here. Again, you don't have to be super detailed here. Alright, then we're going to go over here and put a couple trees over here. I'm going to put one I think about here. And it's going to be fairly straight. Maybe a little slight tilt to it, but you can make your trees however you want. I'm just basing mine off of my original painting. Give it some limbs here. Okay, and then one more tree here, and it's gonna set. Well, in my original painting I had it setting a little more forward to this one, but I don't really want to pull this one too much down, so I'm gonna set it back on this painting. And it's going to be right about here. It's going to come up here. And it's got, on mine that I painted, I gave it a crooked little arm here, or branch here. Take it up. I think it had quite that many limbs on it, but they're there now, and I'm not going to try and take them off. That's a fat limb. I'm going to have to fatten up the trunk of this tree because I made that limb so fat. Alright, then we'll give it a little bit of stuff here. Just by wiggling the brush back and forth. And then we got to start creating our shadows. Okay? So actually for those back there, I should have created the shadows on those and put the glaze over it. So we're just going to come down. This one will have a big shadow. Actually, this guy should be leaning over that way a little bit. And then these back here, I think I'm just going to mix some white in with my black. So they're not quite so dark. Maybe not quite that much black because that's too light of a gray. And put these in. I'm going to have to put some glazing medium over these. This one back here, we need some shadow from it. And some of these distant trees we can have some shadow from. I'll wipe some of the paint off my brush here. And they can just kind of fade away. Make sure if you're pulling down from a skinny tree, you make it a skinny shadow. I mean, they don't have to reach the bottom, so. Okay. I don't want to be able to see through our shadows. They need to be solid. I'll just go ahead and darken these and come back and glaze in between these trees. I'll do that on camera so you can see it. Okay, that is good enough right there for our shadows. I'm going to go ahead and put the leaves on the dark trees. So again, we're going to need a scruffy type brush. I'm going to try a different one here because I want these to be a little bit more looser, more airy, since they're more forward. So I'm using a Deerfoot stippler, and this is a very soft They make deerfoot ones. I call them deerfoot because it looks like a deer's foot. Here's a small one. And this one is particularly soft bristles. But they make some that are a little bit stiffer bristles, if you can find them. Some of the companies have done away. This is a low Cornell one, and it is a discontinued brush. So I'm just very gently tapping this on here. I'm not pushing very hard because I don't want, tons of coverage. I want them to look a little loose, and I do kind of want to cover up some of those limbs a little bit more. So I'm going to make a little bit darker mix, or pick up a little bit more paint, because I don't want to see the ends of the branches. Okay, that's good enough for that one. So I'm going to go over here to this one and tap some in here. Turn the brush, don't keep it going one direction. Come down here and go through the middle, because trees just don't have limbs out on the outer edges. I might come over the edge here. Just a little bit more here. I want it to be just a little bit darker. Okay, so that is enough foliage for those trees, I think. And it looks pretty loose and airy. You can see through the trees, and that's what you want. You don't want to not see through those trees. Okay, I'm going to get this completely dry so I can come in and do my glazing on these trees, because I should have added those shadows in to push those shadows back a little bit. So I want to glaze on those a little bit, and we can just do it in an up and down motion. We don't have to go back and forth. These big ones will not get any glaze on them, so we'll try to stay off of those. I do want to adjust my trunk here a little bit. Running out of paint. Okay, I didn't want to have to squeeze any more out, but I'm going to have to. Just to fix that little bitty place there. I just about made that shadow too fat, but we will go with it. Okay. We do want to put a little bit of shadowing. So I'm glad I put some more black out. And down here for reflection. Around these trees. So this one's going to kind of go off the edge over here. I have hardly any paint whatsoever on my brush, so okay, a little bit of reflection there for those. Alright, let's get it dry. Okay, I'm going to glaze over these shadows real quick. Or reflections, whatever they are. Push them back down in there. Just that white with a little bit of glazing medium, or a lot of glazing medium and a little bit of white, depending on how dark you need your glaze to be. Completely want to cover up the trunk of that tree. This one could use a little bit more. Oh, missed one over here. While I have this glazing medium and white out, I'm going to brighten up through here a little bit. A little bit more of that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to let that dry because these two over here I might have to go back over them a little bit. Undecided there. But while it is drying, we can work on our tree. Get our reds out. So I've got crimson. And scarlet. And vermilion. Now you can use cad red. Be a nice color, but I don't have that one. So these are the colors I'll be using. So you just use whatever colors that you have that you like. I'm making a mess of myself here. Alright, we're going to go back to tapping in our foliage. So get a nice brush that can tap that in. We'll start with our darkest red, which mine is crimson. And if you want it darker, you can always add a little bit of black to it. And this is a nice full tree, so bring it out over these. It goes all the way to the top of the canvas. Try to keep it loose as best you can. Mine is pretty much filled in on mine. I mean, I didn't leave much gapping because it's the prominent focal point. And so I don't want it to look like a big circle though, so try to keep your shape a little bit irregular. And come up over the top of the canvas here. Get a little bit more of that crimson out. Now some reds are not very opaque, like this one is not, I don't feel. So I might require a little bit more layers in here. Alright, when you've got this color where you feel like it's good, but you haven't completely covered up your tree here. You don't want to do that. I'm just going to wipe the paint off of my brush and go into my next color, which mine is Scarlet. And load that color on my brush and start applying it. And I don't want to completely cover up all that first red that I put on. Feel like that one is good, then wipe off the excess paint and go into the next color. Mine is Vermilion. How pretty is this? Oh my gosh. Love this color. Love it. So bright. And anytime you feel like you've covered up too much of one of your colors, just go pick it up and tap a little bit more of that in. I think I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So I might put a little bit of red back over in here. It's so dark behind back there where that tree is, so it kind of loses a little bit. Alright, so now we want to take our brush with the little bit that's still on here and just come down here, and I'm kind of on the very corner of this brush, and I'm just going to tap some reflection down in here. I think I'm actually going to get a different brush, a smaller one. Get my smaller Deerfoot. I don't want to leave rows. So I just picked up a little bit of each color there. I mean, you can just take your filbert brush, and which I might do here in a second, and leave some like specific little dabs. I think on my original one I did use just a small round brush or something to tap this in down here. And we'll bring them over this way so our tree kind of comes over. leave it out of my black there. Because this is more of a reflection, not actual leaves laying on the ground. Don't overdo it down here, okay? Alright, we gotta finish our reflections down in there. So I'm going to take my flat brush and we're going to pick up a little bit of white, I think. That's what I did first, although I can't remember. That's been too long ago and I did not make a videotape of it, so I don't know. So, and we want to make some reflection stuff coming. It's okay if you go across your shadows, or reflections, I guess would be. Oop. Forgot my red paint was wet. Don't want to be transferring red paint. So I'll skip that area down there for now. And more white. I'm probably going to have to wait for my red to get completely dry because I need to put some across that. And that looks really pink right there to me. And you can do some with your brush flat. I don't want it to cross that black right there. So my red's got to dry before I can bring some of that down there. I think I'm going to get a little bit of black out. And just kind of dry brush some of that. I can get my tube open. I'm still just using this little flat brush here. I loaded my brush, then I wiped it off and removed a lot of it. So we can just bring a little bit of this across. Maybe try to stay out of the center because I want to keep the center brighter. And again, I've got to wait for that red to dry. I'm going to kind of put this where I put my highlights. I don't really remember how I did it on my original one, but this looks very similar. Fix that. That's going to bug me. Put a little bit more white through here. Some brighter highlights. Okay, so basically I've got to put my white highlights through there and a little bit of black underneath the highlights. So this picture did not print out very well because it looks very brown. But as you can see, I put a little bit of black underneath where the white highlight reflections things are. So really I just need to do it through here where I put my reflection down there.